Hello, I'm Barbara Jackson, Director of Leisure Services for the City of Las Vegas, Nevada, and I have the honor today to introduce a legend in his own time. On behalf of the American Academy for Parks and Rec Administration, the Park and Recreation legend, Charles Jordan. Welcome, Charles. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. This is a real honor.
Let's talk straight off. What led you to join the field of Parks and Recreation, and who mentored you?
I like your word led because I thought I was going to have difficulties trying to explain how I got in the field of Parks and Recreation because I was led. I didn't have a choice. When I graduated from college, went back to my hometown, they had never hired a professional person of color to work in City Hall. And I couldn't get a job. So I became a gardener and started working for Lawrence Harvey, the movie actor. And so I did gardening work for about 6 months before I received a call from the mayor of Palm Springs. And I was just looking for a job. I wanted to stay home. I had been gone for 6 years and I wanted to stay home. And so this was the only job. If they had called and said, "You're driving a very clean garbage truck," would I have taken that? I would have been tempted to stay because I love Palm Springs that much. So I wasn't by choice. It was just a chance that I got into this field.
And who mentored you as you developed and went along in Parks and Recreation?
Well, okay, from the beginning, I didn't have a mentor because there were no professional blacks in the city of Palm Springs. But the man that I worked for, he was my only mentor. I watched how he worked, not in Parks and Recreation, but how he handled people. And that really became a very strong suit and very invaluable throughout my career. But I didn't have a mentor initially. As I grew in the field, then I started looking at others and how they worked, but no one in particular. And time will prove that I was on a trek.
Was there a particular moment when you knew Parks and Rec was what you wanted to do?
No.
No?
And I still don't know whether that's where I'm supposed to be.
Still evolving. Still evolving.
Yeah, Parks and Rec has been wonderful, but I'm not sure this is where I'm supposed to be.
Okay. Well, what changes have you observed over the years in Parks and Recreation as you've seen it grow?
Not enough. Not enough. It's ironic that I think it was about 14 years ago they had the conference here in San Antonio. And I don't recall any other time in the history of NRPA when they had a director to be the keynoter, which bothers me. I keynoted the conference, and at that time I asked my colleagues one question that has not been answered today, and that is, what is going to happen to Parks and Recreation? I'm afraid that we spend too much time on being just fun and games. And fun and games are never a priority of government or those who are allocating the funds. And that we need to move beyond fun and games. And that was a question I asked when. And that was, what, 1980, in the 80s, early 80s.
Well, let's talk about accomplishments, though, since you've been in the field. Can you talk about some of the most significant accomplishments that you've had?
That I have had? Oh, that's right. This is about me.
This is all about you. This is about you.
I was thinking about the field of Parks and Recreation. Oh yes, I've had many. I've had angels along the way. None of my own choosing what happens to me. I have been in political office. I was elected as the first person of color to the Portland City Council. I became a city commissioner. So I was a city commissioner of parks before I became the director of parks in Portland.
So you've seen both sides.
Right,
You're
I've
lucky.
seen both sides, but I started at the top, and then I think it's somewhat of a curse then to become director because I know what's going on at the top, I know the discussions, and so I worked a little harder to make sure that we were more than just fun and games. Everybody loves fun and games.
That's true.
But when the money is short, fun and games are put on the back burner. And I wanted to keep it up front. So that I think has really been a turning point in my career. And I came down to Austin, Texas. I ran their park system for 5 years. And after that, I went back to Portland, and that's when I became a director in Portland, Oregon, because when I left Portland, I was a city commissioner. I left politics. It's good to leave a winner because if you leave a winner, you can always come back and finish the dance.
So let me follow your track here. You Miami, then to Portland.
No, from
Miami?
Palm Springs.
Palm Springs, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Palm Springs to Portland.
To Portland.
And
to
Portland
Austin.
to Austin. Austin back to Portland.
Okay, and during that time, significant accomplishments above and beyond.
Okay.
Council member.
Being appointed by President Reagan to the President's Commission on American Outdoors, where we travel around the country for 18 months talking to Americans about the great outdoors and what people wanted to do for the next 30 years. 16 Americans were appointed. Also being appointed by President Clinton to be on the American Rivers Program. That was designated certain rivers around America that they wanted to protect. And also meeting some very, very important people in my life. Pat Noonan was one of those who was honored last night here, and I received an award for him. But meeting Pat Noonan probably was the most significant thing to happen in my professional career.
Let's talk a little about him for those who may not know Pat Noonan.
Pat is the founder and was the chairman of the Conservation Fund. Okay. It's one of the premier conservation organizations housed in Virginia.
And you
Pat,
just happen to be chairman of the board of currently of Conservation
Fund.
Okay.
Just so happens that Pat wanted to do something else. He, after being the chairman for so long, he wanted to leave behind a program, and he is working on a world-class blueway back east, and he had asked me to succeed him as chairman of the board. So I have been there for the last 2 to 3 years as chairman of the board.
Fabulous. The city of Portland was where you were last active in Parks and Recreation as a director. Talk about the city of Portland's accomplishments.
Well,
that stand out.
Portlanders love the great outdoors. They love parks and recreation. But it's hard for me to isolate Portland because, as you know, I traveled a lot during that time and spoke to many parks agencies around the country. And so I always looked at Portland as my laboratory. But it's difficult to move beyond the fun and games. I mean, it's hard to change that, to get people to think of you in a different way. But because I had been in public office, it was a little easier for me because I still had my political contacts and my political support. There was always a threat that I would run for mayor. Because a little known secret, before I left Portland, I could have been the first black mayor. I mean, I had it. They had offered it to me, and I said no.
No.
And so, but that was good because when I got back, I was always perceived as a threat.
Yeah.
They never knew when I was going to run or if I was going to run. So Parks and Recreation enjoyed a period there where it was supported strongly.
Okay.
But over the years, we didn't do our job very well in Parks and Recreation. We just became too comfortable. We became too dependent on people to look out for us and to love us and to cuddle us. And now we find ourselves today in a crisis.
Yes.
Because during periods of reduction, where do you cut first? You're not going to cut police. And you're not going to cut public works.
Right.
And where are you going to go? You're going to go to the fun and games.
And I face that right now. We're going to get to that in a little bit.
Okay.
Talk to me about some skills and attributes that you see that are necessary for successful park and rec directors throughout.
Well, you really do have to truly love people. I don't mean just say that. Everybody says that I love people. You got to truly love people, and you've got to know the tools of your trade. There are a lot of people in Parks and Recreation who really don't understand the tools of their trade. All they see is we go out, we plan games, we cut grass, and that's it. But they don't realize the potential of the tools of their trade. And they don't realize that they've got to collaborate, even though you're guaranteed your resources. You have a moral, not a professional obligation. You have a moral obligation because citizens don't have a choice. They have to pay their taxes. And therefore, they're paying whether they want to or not. So it should be perceived as a moral obligation to give them the best you can and not just relax and say, well, whether regardless of what I do, the money's going to be coming in anyway. Now we are experiencing reduction, and citizens are not out there fighting for us.
Right.
And so I think Parks and Recreation are facing some crisis now.
Okay. The tools of the trade are?
Tools of the trade, people,
Okay.
parks, and programs.
Okay.
And those are the tools of our trade. That's what we work with, people, parks, and programs. The next step is, what do you do with people, parks, and programs?
Okay.
You just do not engage in fun and games. Fun and games are good in themselves. Now, don't get me wrong.
Right.
They're intrinsically good. But if you're going to be respected, you're going to have to be more than fun and games. And so you take your people, parks, and programs, and how do you use those? You use those to build community. I don't mean communities. I don't mean building housing and road,
Right.
but connecting people, connecting people to their neighborhoods, and connecting people to the land. That's how you build community. And that is one of the greatest needs that America is facing today. And yet we are not perceived as a critical player. And during my career, that was my major challenge, is to get us to become a major player and to become needed and not just nice to have.
We're going to widen the highway a little bit more. Talk to me about just the park and recreation profession as a whole.
Well, I am hoping that programs like this, that the legends and some of the other committed directors and staff members who have retired, that maybe we can start having more conversations. We don't need to just look back and say, well, we were
nice.
Yeah, the over the hill gang. No, we cannot become the over the hill gang. Parks and Recreation has been too good to us. It was not only, I did mention in the beginning, it was my way out. I don't think I would be here were it not for a boys club, someone who cared, some adult who really cared and had and provided an opportunity for me to play basketball. My brother, who just went the opposite direction, time in incarceration, because he didn't have the opportunities I had. And so I think that what we need to do is to come together, and the wisdom that we have, we need to share that as we're doing here. With those who are coming behind us, those who are in positions today like yourselves, what would we have done differently? That's the conversation we need to have with you and your colleagues. Looking back, what would we have done differently to put you in a stronger position than you are today?
How do we overcome that fun and games reputation you're talking about? How do
Collaboration.
we give them?
Collaboration. Oh gosh, I tried it for 10 years. I know it works. There is no way that we're going to become critical to a society unless we collaborate with someone else. You and I, if we have a shortage of funds, we're going to look to food and housing and everything else before you consider that vacation or that trip to Vegas. Oh, not for you. You live in Vegas.
Thank you very much.
But for the rest of us, we're always going to put the fun and games to the side because we can't afford it. And so what we have got to do is we've got to demonstrate that I can help you with your health. The most potent weapon that a city has to address the crisis of obesity is Parks and Recreation. We do it every day. We've been doing it for years. We take kids out there and we let them run. We let them get involved. It's the most potent weapon a city has, but a city is not looking to us. They're looking to the health industry now because we have been there all of this time, but we never marketed that part of our portfolio. And so fun and games, we need to be more than fun and games. We need to collaborate with the hospitals, with the medical fields. We can collaborate with developers. The things that we bring to our neighborhood, we really make a neighborhood because we are connecting people. We don't do that. Education. Little Johnny will study if little Johnny knows you're not going to play on the team. You're not going to be on this team unless your grades are improved. You can't play on the team, Johnny. During that period, excuse me, during that period, he will study. We have run tests on that. We have studies to show that during that period, he studied. But once the basketball season was over, he didn't care. And so, but at least we know that we have the potential if we would only pursue it a little farther.
How about public safety and law enforcement, all that?
Public safety, the most potent weapon a city has to address the issue of juvenile delinquency is Parks and Recreation. Thousands of kids, every day, every night, with us. And while they're with us, they're not hurting themselves or destroying property. It's when they leave us. Those kids are with us, they are good citizens. The point is, we need to take more time and we need to follow them a little longer than just saying, okay, we're closing the center tonight. We never do that. And so when it comes to crime prevention, we are the best. When they're with us, they're not hurting themselves, they're not hurting anyone else, and they are not destroying property. It's when they leave us, and that's where the collaboration comes in again. We need to work with law enforcement. Law enforcement has never really, in my opinion, really respected what we bring to the table.
Really?
They are not very creative in their thinking. But somehow we need to make sure that little Johnny never escape at least one of us. And when we close the center at 10 o'clock, that's where maybe they take over and watch to make sure that the streets are clear, that they get home.
Yeah, I agree with you wholeheartedly that we play so many roles. I mean, we're teachers, we're educators, we're counselors, we're fiscal agents, we're all of that.
Right.
I really do. Someone who's entering the field for the first time, what kind of advice would you give them?
Know the capabilities of your tools. Know what you can do with fun and games. Know what you can do with parks. Know what you can do with land. Take a look at the land. This is the ideal time for a shaker and mover to take over a department like yourself. And I'm been pushing you hard. Yeah, I'm still pushing you.
I'm honored.
Well, I'm still pushing you because you do have that understanding. This is the time. If we're ever going to change, this is an ideal time for change. It's hard to change when things are going well. You have to disturb the inertia. The inertia has been disturbed in America. We didn't do it. Unfortunately, it was 9/11. And now we really don't know what's going to disturb the inertia. But things are in somewhat of a flux. This is the time for us to step forward and make progress. This is the time for us to bring the skills and the tools we have to help society through these very difficult moments.
And how do we do that with politicians?
Well,
successfully.
that is something that would take me a long time.
You have it time.
I don't have the time. But
You have
the
it.
point is, we've got to get political. You realize how many citizens we have involved, how many citizens we really touch, but we don't use them. NRPA is our national organization. We have park boards, we have Park Foundation, we have Park Friends Group, we even have a citizen component in parks nationally in NRPA.
Okay.
When do we mobilize all those people? We don't do that. If we would mobilize those people and get them on a project, we would say, look, you know, we take trips, you know that, we take trips back to Washington every year,
Yes.
and we go around and meet. To me, that is the biggest waste of time and money. We go and we get 15 minutes to go in there and see our congressman and shake his hand, and we're in park. Okay, and they move you right out and they bring in someone else, and that's all. It's a waste of time. Stay home. Take those dollars that we were going to use for traveling and start preparing candidates of our choosing. Start convincing people to go into a public office, to go on the city council, and we will support them. Start working to cultivate our own. If we got and test this out sometime on your own, park foundations are normally composed of shakers and movers. Call them SAMs. Those are people of resources. That's why they're on the Park Foundation, because they have access to resource. Those are the people that when our congressmen and senators come home for recess, those are the people they go to see to ask for support. We need to work with those people before our senators and congressmen come home and say, look, we need support. We need their support of land, water, and conservation. So when they come asking you for money, you find out whether or not they're going to support land, water, and conservation. We don't do that. We don't prepare our park boards and our park foundation and our citizen group to be about the business of parks and recreation. We don't. We just sit back and wait until people come and give us things and others to take care of us. We are facing a crisis, and we need the type of leadership now that's going to say we need to move beyond fun and games, and we've got to get involved in community building, not just parks and recreation.
That's fascinating. I'm learning so much. It's a learning environment here.
Well, I'm going to
really
continue to push you.
What do you foresee as the future of parks and recreation?
Oh, it's bright. Oh, it is. It is bright. I have never met a finer group of people than I have in my travels. And as you know, I speak to thousands every year. And right now, as chairman of the board of the Conservation Fund, I'm invited out to speak on the issue of conservation, protecting these special places and setting them aside. But I make it very clear to them that my heart is urban parks and recreation.
Yeah.
Because I don't care how many acres of land, like the Conservation Fund, we have preserved over 4 million acres of land. You know, and I ask my board at times, I say, but where's our legacy? Who's going to protect those lands? I'm telling you, the ones who are going to protect those lands, they are with Barbara right now. Those are the ones. We need to be working with those young people and preparing them to assume the responsibility for the millions of acres of land that we're going to set aside for future generations. But no one is telling that generation, look, you're going to inherit millions of acres of land, but you need to start preparing now. We don't do that. And so what conservation organizations have got to do, they've got to develop a closer working relationship with local parks and recreation. And so I am that connection. I travel and I tell them about what you and I do through fun and games, the things that we can accomplish. And it resonates with them. It resonates because they understand that there's no way we're going to protect these millions of acres we're setting aside unless the next generation understand them. And what they do not understand, they will not value. And what they will not value, they will not protect. And what they will not protect, they will lose. And so we have no legacy. And so there's a lot of work to do, Barb. You and your colleagues now, your conferences must change. You've got to have a new conversation. And it can't be just fun and games. We all understand that. You need to really start talking collaboration, more than fun and games, community building, smart growth. What does smart growth have to do with parks and rec? It has a lot to do with parks and recreation.
Tell me more.
Well,
Tell me more.
smart growth. We do not get invited to those conferences.
That's
I
true.
get
You're
invited
right.
because of my conservation connection. But that's where the money is. Smart growth. That's where the developers have an interest. They want to develop. And so, but parks and recreation is not at the table. And so when I go to the table, everyone is talking about land use and conservation and everything else. And when I stand to introduce myself, and I have to tell them, urban parks and recreation is what I'm all about. And I need to tell you right now that you need us. It's not that we're nice to have, we're needed to have. Because you're not going to finish this task in your lifetime. But the ones who will pick up the mantle and carry it the rest of the way are with me in my local park system. And so we need to talk. We need your support. But we don't have those kind of conversations. I don't know who was the keynote speaker this year here. Who was the keynote?
Emmett Smith.
Emmett Smith.
Emmett Smith.
The football player.
Football player, yes.
And
Yes.
Emmett, I'm sure he was very good.
He
It
was
was
very
very
profound.
interesting, but
Entertaining.
But was entertaining.
Entertaining.
And it's and I
Yes,
hey,
I
far be it from me to knock entertainment. We need to be about business. The next couple of years of NRPA, they should change the conferences entirely. It's got to be business. It's got to be all business. And there are things we need to do ourselves before we start bringing in someone else. No one knows our field better than us. So I don't know the last time you've had and I'm not promoting myself, a director speak
Yes.
as a keynoter for the annual conference. Do you recall ever having a director?
I don't recall. I don't recall. And I have been kind of in a quandary about the conference at certain points in time because I've gotten some valuable classes per se. But I do agree with you that the overall theme message has been about how nice and warm and fuzzy we are, and I'm dealing with political realities that are killing me on a daily basis.
Well, then you understand. Then
Absolutely.
maybe you're going to be the one who will carry the message. You need to do business, not as usual.
Yeah.
And we have directors out there. We have some very fine, effective directors. It doesn't have to be Charles Jordan speaking. There are a lot of directors can come in and say, gang, it's time we close the door and really start talking about the business at hand.
Your philosophical tenets, the beliefs that you've had that have carried you throughout your career. Let's talk about that.
Well, right now I'm really in a different stage now because I'm writing the book, and in order to do that, the organization wanted to know how I got on the track that I was on and how I came up with all these crazy ideas. But in order to do that, I've got to go back 6 decades.
That's fine.
And I've got to look at all the influences in my life. A lot of the questions you've been asking me, why did I take the track that I'm on right now? And so that has been a challenge for me, a real challenge. But I see where the influences are. And all along the way, Barbara, there was someone, a boys club, a Parks and Recreator, a youth center, someone who really cared. I mean, an adult who really cared. And as I have to deal with the issue of race, of course. And because of my color, I never went to a park until I was about 16 to 17. Even though there were parks there, if they were, I couldn't go. But I could go in the wilderness. And so I became acquainted with the great outdoors. And I learned to love the outdoors and the animals. And yet, as I'm coming up to the day with the book, I'm trying to understand right now, what is it about what we do and how we do it that is not resonating more with people of color? Because it is really critical that as I travel around the country, I'm telling people, most of my audience is 99% white. We're not involved at that level, but I know we care. And so we've got to, you and I have what I call an ethnic responsibility, an additional responsibility than our white brothers and sisters. And we must carry that out. We must speak in such a way that it resonates with people of color. There are 73 million blacks and browns in America. Now, there's no movement in America that's going to work if you leave that many people out, particularly as we talk about the land and the preservation, because 5 people living upstream can create more havoc than 15,000 people downstream can clean up in a lifetime. So we've got to start bringing about more diversity in what we do and how we do it. And that's the challenge that you're going to face and your colleagues are going to face. And I know this is about me, but it's really about you. What I'm leaving behind, is there something that you are going to hear that will resonate and that you will take up the mantle? That's more important than what Charles Jordan has done. It's what is Barbara Jackson going to do? And when will she start? Not only what, but when. And yesterday was too late. Did you have another question you asked? I mean, I didn't even answer that one to the full.
Well,
That's the problem with me.
I think that you did. I think that, and I know that I agree with you wholeheartedly, having been raised in a small town in Southern Virginia. There were a lot of experiences that were closed doors to me. And so as I came up, I didn't have the wherewithal to say to my kids, come use this experience, because I'd never had it. And so I think it's kind of generational. But I'm really concerned about how that gets broken, how we do that. And is that more exposure, making more events for people, more opportunities for people? How do you change that mindset? I would think that my kids are in a position now where they can see that the doors are open. They don't have a barrier. They can go and do that, but getting them to then use it.
Now that is a challenge, but it's an exciting one, Barb. One of the challenges that our kids face is they don't know how they got here. See, they're coming up, discrimination and segregation is just words they hear. They don't know. And so they're quick to get angry, rightfully so. But that's the fault of that's our fault. We did not tell our people. I like as I look back over my book, I see how much Jewish influence in my life because my parents worked for them, and they would always talk to me when I was growing up. And one of the things I can recall so beautifully is, Charles, know something about your history.
Yes.
Know something. Our kids don't know how they got here.
Yes.
They were born into a society where they're told that, hey, you're free, and they are free. You can do what you want to do. But they don't know what went on before. Right. And so anytime they encounter something like discrimination, look or smell like it, they strike out. And see, they don't sit down and want to talk about it. They want to strike out. And that's why we have so many young people that we're losing to gangs and to drugs, because they really are angry and no one has told them this is what you're going to encounter. And let me tell you, we did not sit them down and tell them their history. By and large, we did not do that. And we did not say, these are some of the things you may encounter because of the color of your skin, or the slant of your eyes, or the manner in which you worship your God. You know, and so be prepared for that. You don't strike out. And so that has been the challenge. And for me, my religious belief, I believe very strongly in God, and I respect whatever your beliefs are. I love my God, and I know how He moves in my life, that has really been my rock of Gibraltar. I know what God has in mind for me, and that is that I am to be a witness. And how do I be a witness? That doesn't mean preaching to you and singing to you. It means the way I live my life. There's no doubt in your mind. You know I love you. You know I love you. My white brothers and sisters know that I love them. But there is something I'm wrestling with in my book. As I'm writing, I keep wanting to say, but there is a special love I have for my people, Barb, and I have not found the way to, I can't explain it. There is a special love
It will come.
I have for my people. It will come.
It will come. And your book is coming out when? Here's your ad.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's what the organization has.
Is it about conservation, or is
it's
it
going to
about
be
Charles Jordan?
conservation and diversity. But as you can see, I wrap it all together.
Yes.
Right now, the most important chapters are the first 3 chapters, because they are about me.
Right.
The most important thing is the source. Because if you don't believe in the source, then no matter what I recommend, you have no confidence in it. So I need you to believe in Charles Jordan. And so that's what I'm working on now. The influences in my life and why I believe the way that I believe. And if you can believe that, then you're more inclined to accept some of the things I'm going to say we need to do in the field of conservation and in the field of parks and recreation.
In your closing minutes, the floor is yours.
Well, the book, I didn't answer. That it's important that hopefully by the end of next year I will be finished with the book, and that I will get it published. That is going to be important because it is there where I'm really going to lay out a lot of the things you and I have discussed here. And I'm so motivated now. You have not had this pleasure yet of being a grandparent.
Oh, yes, I am.
All right, then you know. As you look at your grandkid and you look at your kid, you got to wonder, what am I leaving behind? And I don't mean material things.
Yes.
What am I going to do to make sure? And my first was Mia, and Mia is 3 years old. And I'm always saying, Mia, I love you. Pawpaw loves Mia. But what does that mean? That I'm going to buy her all the toys she needs? No. If I really love Mia, I'm going to give her a fighting chance. And that's what I do now. I'm out here trying to make this world a better place. And so that you will treat Mia, and I'd like to know what you're telling your Mias, because they're going to have to live together. So.
Fabulous.
It's just hard to sit here and just talk about something so important and not get excited about it.
Well, you should, and I can see why you are the legend that you are, so deserving. Anything else you want to share?
No, except that I hope that you will take this moment, and as you leave, you think about it as much as I, because like I said, I'm not going anywhere soon, but you need to start now, and today is the time you need to start talking to your colleagues. We need to get busy in bringing about the change to put parks and recreation in a position of respect and to be needed and not just nice to have. And we can do it. Now is the time.
Thank you.